is up, everybody? Welcome back to the Mid-Level Media channel, your hub for everything physical media and entertainment. And today we are going to talk about the Vinegar Syndrome edition of Sidekicks, this VSU edition. And yeah, I know this one came out a couple of weeks ago. It came and went by this point. The physical media world moves fast, but I didn't get my Vinegar Syndrome shipment until like February the 7th or February the 6th, so I didn't get to watch this until last week. So I wanted to talk about it because it's just one of those movies that I have a deep affection for and I grew up with. I grew up watching this movie. I did not grow up, and I know everybody's going to gasp when I say this, I didn't grow up watching The Karate Kid. I didn't see The Karate Kid till way later in my life. So this is the karate coming-of-age film that I know from my childhood. So I was so excited when Vinegar Syndrome announced this, and I'm just really loving what they're doing with these VSU editions. You know, with Roadhouse, they did Cloak and Dagger last year. It's just not necessarily like horror films, but I don't know, it just feels like they play in a lot of different genres, which I feel like is the mission statement of the VSU editions. That's what they kind of set out to do. So I don't really anticipate a lot of horror movies getting this VSU treatment. It's going to be more like action-based, maybe more like coming-of-age children films, which I just think is really cool. But in movies like Beastmaster and Six String Samurai, I think this whole line is supposed to be playing in different genres. So I just think that's really cool. And I know I've criticized Vinegar Syndrome in the past. They release a lot of trash horror films. I don't want to say trash. I know some people really enjoy the films, but more like obscure horror films from the 70s and 80s and 90s. And what they're doing, honestly, great work. Because these movies, you know, shouldn't be lost in time, and they're restoring them. And they may not be movies for me. They may not be movies that I necessarily enjoy. But I appreciate that Vinegar Syndrome's bringing them back and giving them nice treatment, nice box set, nice restorations. All that stuff I think is really cool. And they definitely made a good profit off of it. Now they're starting to get legitimate movies like Sidekicks. I know this is not a great movie. It's not a masterpiece by any means. I'm not going to try to spin it and say that it is. I really enjoy the movie, and I just watched it again for the first time in maybe like 20 years. I still really enjoy the movie, but this is not as good of a movie as The Karate Kid. So I'm not going to act like it's as good as The Karate Kid. This is a movie from 1992, and it's a coming-of-age film. That's how I would classify it if you haven't seen this movie before. I'm going to try to sell you on Sidekicks. It's a coming-of-age film, kind of reminiscent of The Karate Kid, very reminiscent of The Karate Kid, but there are some different twists to it. But you got Chuck Norris in this film. You got Jonathan Brandis, who I just think that, I don't know, the more I watch Jonathan Brandis from back in the day, you got It 1990, which is one of my favorite horror movies of all time. Never Ending Story 2. He's great in everything. Ladybugs is so underrated. I know that has a Blu-ray. I need to get that in the collection. He's great in everything. He just brings such a sincerity and level of emotion to like any role that he plays. This isn't the most serious movie by any means, but he just brings such a elegance to his performance, such a charisma. I just love him. I think he's super underrated as a child actor, and he was just taken from us way too soon. Like, he could have done so much more with his career if given more opportunities. I just think Jonathan Brandis was just a standout child star. Chuck Norris in this movie, he's kind of more or less playing himself. This movie gets meta, which I think is kind of ahead of its time in that way. But you got Joe Piscopo in this movie, who was also in Dead Heat that Vinegar Syndrome put out on 4K last year. Bo Bridges, Julia Nixon, who was in Rambo 2. I knew she looked familiar, and I was like, oh, she was in Rambo 2, which I watched for the first time last year. You got Danica McKellar in the film from The Wonder Years, so I always remember making that correlation when I was a kid. And yeah, it's just a Karate Kid, a very Karate Kid inspired coming-of-age movie. But there's a little bit of a unique twist to this, because throughout the movie, you're getting these daydream sequences, because Brandis's character daydreams a lot about Chuck Norris movies and him like partnering up with Chuck Norris as his sidekick, hence the title of the movie. So you get all these sequences of, like, you know, him in the Wild Wild West with Chuck Norris in one of his movies, him in the jungle, the Vietnam jungle, fighting with him, shooting guns with him. So there's a lot of fun sequences just kind of sprinkled in throughout this movie that kind of break up the actual plot. I will say that the finale of the film is really incredible. Like, I love the last 25, 30 minutes of this movie. They actually get Chuck Norris in the movie, the actual Chuck Norris. He shows up at the karate tournament. He teams. Look, I don't want to give away the whole movie, but anyway, the ending's really cool if you haven't seen it. And it's fun because it's not just Jonathan Brandis, his character, Barry, by himself. Like, he has a whole team with him, so they're all like competing against each other, and you get this really awesome fight with Chuck Norris and Joe Piscopo that's just freaking fantastic. But the thing that I've always remembered, like, I didn't remember everything about this movie, But the thing that I have always remembered and took away from this movie was that flaming brick sequence at the end is just so iconic. And I would say that flaming brick sequence where Jonathan Brandis has to smash those bricks, I still don't get how they do that kind of stuff, is more iconic than the kick at the end of the Karate Kid with Daniel Son when he kicks Johnny right in the face. I think that flaming brick sequence, or just as iconic, I won't say it's more iconic, just as iconic of an ending to a karate movie as the first Karate Kid. I love that sequence so much. Getting into the transfer though a little bit, I was a little disappointed. I will say I was a little disappointed in the transfer. This is a newly scanned and restored 4K from its original 35mm camera negative. The transfer though, guys, was a little bit of a mixed bag for me. All the dream sequences in the jungle and the Old West, you know, with Chuck Norris, like all that stuff looked fantastic. And I will say this has HDR, but there is no Dolby Vision here, so maybe that has something to do with it. But all the dream sequences and all that stuff looked great. Like the jungle looked lush and green, and there was like flames and fire and all that kind of stuff. All that stuff looked fantastic. But most of the real world stuff, it looked good, but not great. Like in particular, like there was some scenes like in the beginning in the classroom, like I really noticed it with the teacher. But you know, it just looked really white. And I mean, the walls were white, just the aesthetic of the room itself was white, but it looked really white. All the colors were very washed out. Like even the skin tones just looked incredibly washed out and pale. And you just didn't feel that HDR enhancement in some of those scenes. And I mean, it's not a bad transfer. The facial detail was still very strong, still fantastic. There were some impressive moments throughout the movie utilizing that HDR to its fullest potential. Like I said, some of those jungle sequences like looked fantastic. Like the opening with like the samurai stuff, like it kind of reminded me a lot of Mortal Kombat, the opening of this movie. All that stuff looked great. Like there are moments of true greatness as far as picture quality in this movie, but overall it did not live up to my expectations. And I also feel like I need to point out, this is the first time this movie has been upgraded since VHS. And somebody commented that they put out some kind of like Blockbuster exclusive DVD back in the day, but I don't really know too much about that. You know, that might be the case. So if that's the case, this movie hasn't been upgraded since DVD. So they had to put in a lot of work into this restoration. So I understand it's not going to be perfect, but at the same time, they just did Freeway, and I think that movie, that was the first time that had been upgraded since DVD or VHS. So I just feel like, you know, with Freeway looking so spectacular, like Roadhouse looking so great, Amityville, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2, it just didn't live up to what I was hoping for, you know, out of a Vinegar Syndrome 4K release. So it's good. I'm not saying it's bad. There are some legitimate moments of greatness in this transfer, but I was honestly just hoping for a little bit better with this transfer, you know, especially with this movie being so close to my heart. I just wanted it to be that definitive like 4K restoration, like that Roadhouse level quality, and it just didn't quite get there for me. So getting into the audio, another disappointing aspect here is this is a DTS HD Master Audio 2.0, which I'm always a fan of the original mono track. It sounded good, like there's nothing wrong with the audio, but I think that they definitely could have benefited with at least 5.1 here, especially with some of those action sequences like in the Vietnam jungle and stuff, explosions and gunfire. Like you could have done some stuff with the sound here. You know, maybe it wasn't possible for them to do. Maybe they didn't have all the materials to put that together, but I think this movie could have definitely benefited from at least, I'm not saying Dolby Atmos, but I'm saying at least a 5.1 mix. I think this movie could have benefited from for sure. So yeah, audio was good, but again, I think they could have done something more with it. Getting into the packaging though, guys, and I'm probably gonna cut to the table for a little unboxing here, but you cannot take away from this freaking spectacular, like to me, these VSU editions are the best packaged physical media in the game right now. They stand up to the Arrow Video box set releases, like in my opinion. Like these are the best package, like maybe Second Sight, but I don't know, I just really love the way that Vinegar Syndrome packages these VSU editions. It's just so freaking cool. You have this flip case right here that's like held together by magnets. That's just freaking awesome. And inside, again, I know I already unboxed this. I did an unboxing video. But this whole like magazine booklet thing with the magazine aesthetic it's just super awesome and original. I just haven't seen anybody else do anything like this. like on the back, like you have the Fight Like Chuck like knives, like they're the coupon for the knives, which is just super cool. This booklet has tons of great tons of great information about the film and the making of the film and the history of making this film. It's just kind of talking about the, you know, the history and Karate Kid and how it influenced like a whole like new genre of coming of age films back in the 80s and the early 90s. So there's some really good stuff in this booklet, and I just love this magazine aesthetic inside of it. So, but opening it up, you got some great artwork on the inside. You know, you have this, you know, they put a slipcover inside their case. Like, come on, guys. They put a freaking slipcover inside this packaging. But I love the images inside here as well, which definitely, that's an image from the film, one of the, you know, daydream sequences. So that's super awesome. And you got the American flag in there. It's just a really cool aesthetic. I love the color scheme too. Like I'm just a big fan of this packaging and the artwork. I think it's freaking awesome. But you have the regular slipcover right here, you know, the front, the back, it looks great. And you got the case that has the original poster art on it, which is always awesome. Flip it open. You have some really cool disc art. So, I mean, Vinegar Syndrome, they're no slouch when it comes to their packaging. Like, their stuff is just always top tier in terms of packaging. It's just so fantastic what they're doing with these VSU editions. So you cannot take away from the packaging here by Vinegar Syndrome. Like, this is just out of this world freaking awesome. Now, getting into the special features, you do get one new audio commentary here. And you also get 5 new interviews, including the director, Aaron Norris, which I didn't point out when I was talking about the movie, but Chuck Norris's brother directed this film. And I think he also directed a couple of the Missing in Action movies as well, which I did not know that Chuck Norris had a brother that directed some of his movies. So that's definitely really cool. And his perspective on it, and just, you know, talking about working with his brother and talking about everything that went into the making of this movie, was definitely really interesting and really fascinating. So always cool to get new special features, you know, especially with a movie that really hasn't gotten this kind of treatment before, guys. Like a VHS, like there wasn't as many special features back in the day with VHS. So now we're getting the definitive edition of Sidekicks with tons of special features, new interviews, new audio commentary. So that's definitely really cool. So at the end of the day, guys, look, the transfer was a little lackluster for me. I was hoping for a little bit better. Audio could have been better, but overall, I do recommend that you own this, especially if you're a fan of the movie. It's still the best way to own this movie. I definitely recommend you grab it for the packaging and the special features alone, because they're just fantastic, even though the transfer's not the best. But if you've never seen this movie before, I would recommend maybe checking it out on a streaming service. I'm not really sure if it's on, it might be on YouTube to rent or something like that before, you know, dropping the money on this, because this is kind of expensive right now. It is available for pre-order on Amazon right now, which I will link that down below, for $45, and it's also available on the Vinegar Syndrome site. There's still plenty of these VSU editions left on there. I think there's still over 1,000, because they always put that total, that information total on there. So there's still plenty on the Vinegar Syndrome site. I think on Amazon though, if you pre-order it, you're not gonna get it with that VSU packaging. You're just gonna get this standard 4K case. So if you want the packaging, go ahead and order it now from the Vinegar Syndrome site, because it's only $45 on there, and it's also $45 on Amazon. Now, I think that the Amazon price will probably drop within the next couple of weeks. It may go down to what Roadhouse was, which I think Roadhouse was like 33 bucks on 4K. So I think this will drop to like $33 on Amazon. But like I said, you'll only get this case right here. You're not going to get any of the bells and whistles and the packaging and all that stuff. So I love this movie. If you love this movie, I do recommend picking this up. But again, this is not a mind-blowing transfer, so I can't like give this the best recommendation possible. And that kind of breaks my heart a little bit, because I really wanted to. But if you are a fan of this movie, you gotta own it. If you like this review, definitely hit that like button, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. We talk about physical media on this channel all the time. If you like that kind of stuff, 4Ks and Blu-rays and reviews and that kind of thing, hit the subscribe button. Also, be sure to comment down below your thoughts on Sidekicks. If you're gonna pick up this Vinegar Syndrome edition, did you already watch the Vinegar Syndrome edition? What are your thoughts? Let me know in that comment section below. Turn on those bell notifications for all future videos, and follow me on all my social media accounts down below. You know, I'm on Twitter, I'm on TikTok, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Letterboxd. If you want to keep up with what I'm watching, follow me at all those places, and we'll see you next time.